that we are about to partake in tonight, God. I pray that what I have to say, what you have shown me, that I steward it well, that I present it well, that I present it in a way that people understand it, God, and that we learn something new about you and what it is you would have us learn. So I pray for open hearts, open ears, open minds to hear what you have to say tonight. And I pray all these things in your Son's name, and we say amen and amen. All right, so welcome to Center for Hope International Ministries this evening. My name is Minister Deb, and tonight we are going to talk about our word for the year, which is evidence. Evidence. And as I like to do, I like to look up words. So what does evidence mean? Well, there's at least two different kinds of meanings. One is court-related, and one is not. So when I looked up the word, it says, I lost my place, that it is your words, your emotions, my intentions do not count. If someone else or God does not see it or acknowledge it, there is no real meaning behind it. That's what evidence means for me, is that you have to show what it is you want to talk about. You have to show, it has to be seen, what it is that you are talking about. All right? So you have to be able to testify about it. There has to be something to be seen or heard, right? And when we are giving evidence outside of a courtroom, Brother Martin is going to tell us what it means to give evidence in a courtroom, but outside of a courtroom, it means enables the mind to see truth, proof arising through our own perceptions by our senses, our testimony, to our testimony or testimony of others, or from reason. So if we take all of that, right, it enables our mind, our own minds, to see truth. Proof arising through our own perceptions. As I was getting in the car to come here, I spilled my pop. My toe is wet and cold. That is my senses. I can feel that. There's evidence that I spilled my gosh darn pop in my new shoes, and my toes are cold. So using our senses to understand what is going on around us. Sometimes we can feel things, and we can be like, wait a minute, I don't think I'm safe here. I think I need to leave this place. Or I need somebody with me who can be a safe person for me. I can go and talk to them. Using your senses to help you understand the truth, right? Or just the testimony of other people, or the testimony from yourself, right? I worked at the baby fold, and the kids would do all kinds of things, and they would we would let them tell their version of what happened in a situation, and then we would say our version of what we saw and how our perceptions received what they were doing. And of course, oftentimes they were not the same. Their perception, I was just trying to, but I saw you as doing whatever it was. So having the testimony, the dialogue between people, and then using your own reason. I'm going to have some cold toes when I go outside because my sock is wet and it's cold outside. So I might want to change my sock and have a dry sock on so it's not cold. Okay, it's not really that bad, but you understand what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to have Martin give a definition of evidence that they use in the courtroom.
So when Minister Deb asked me to think of this definition, I had to go back a little bit because it's been a while. But I would say in a courtroom, usually evidence refers to material that is presented to a trier of fact, whether that's a judge or a jury, that's used in the determination or outcome of a hearing or a trial.
So if I say, I feel, would that be considered evidence?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so there's a difference between a courtroom proceedings and evidence that we are talking about for us at Center for Hope, because that is our word for the year. Evidence. I have evidence that Ramon has good taste. He's wearing a Cardinals hat. Yes, right? That's my perception. If I was to talk to my husband, he would probably say, no, he would say, go Cubs. So evidence, there has to be evidence. Sometimes there can be no evidence. I thought about that. I'm like, God, what are you talking about? How can there be no evidence, which means there's evidence? So he brought me back to when I retired. So I retired. I was, for retirement age, I was young. I was 58. That was a year and a half ago. And we went from 2 incomes to 1. I was making slightly more than Don was making at that time. And yet, if I talked to anybody in this room, nobody would say, oh yeah, I could tell you guys, you're having trouble with money. You got to really scrimp and save, and you got to do this and you got to do that. There was no evidence of that because we didn't have to. So the lack of evidence in this case, we were able to go from 2 incomes to 1, and nobody knew. We didn't even have to change our lifestyle. So there was no evidence of a loss of money. And I was like, oh, okay. So my no evidence is really evidence. Does that make sense? All right. So when we're talking about evidence, we want to make sure, for me, when we get a word that we're going to live by for the year, you kind of have to have your own definition as well. So for me, my evidence is, if I say that this is an example. If I say I gave someone the coat off of my back, it's not true unless someone can testify about that. My definition. Or if God has testified of it to me, to myself, or yourself. There's no evidence. If my intention was to give the coat for accolades, it doesn't count as evidence. You have to be able to see or explain so that others understand that there is evidence that God was working in my life. Just saying, oh yeah, God works in my life. This year that's not going to work. Right? That is not going to work. I can say God is working in my life. He is doing so many great and wonderful things. For me, that's not evidence this year. This year there has to be some proof of that. All right? So if we're going to talk about evidence and we're talking about God, what does the Bible say about evidence? I don't know if you guys know about looking up words in the Bible, right? You can put in a word that you're looking for and it'll take you to scriptures. Evidence is actually in the Bible, but it is in Leviticus and the law. And it is saying this has to happen and this has to happen. And you have to have the evidence of X, Y, Z. So more of the courtroom idea, right? So then I was like, well, God, then, that doesn't really help, right? Because we're not living by the law. So he took me to some different places in the Bible to say, here's some evidence, all right? So first place he took me was Exodus 11, starting at verse 1. So Exodus 11, 1 and 2. All right? So this is the process I used when I was studying these different things that God gave me. 1, there had to be a promise from God or a command from God. And then there had to be the answer to that promise or that command from God in the Bible. So we could see, does God show us the evidence in the Bible? So if we start at Exodus 11, 1 and 2. And the Lord said to Moses, I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. Afterwards, he will let you go from there. When he lets you go, he will surely drive you out of here altogether. Speak now in the hearing of the people, and let every man ask from his neighbor and every woman from her neighbor articles of silver and gold. So it's the last plague, and God is saying, you guys are getting out of here. They are going to be sick and tired of you, and you're leaving on out of Egypt. I would think that would be wonderful enough. They were in slavery for how long? I forget how many years. How many years? Remember, Monica? 400? I don't remember. They were there for a long time. All right, so they were getting their freedom. They're getting out of Egypt. All right, cool. They got out of Egypt. But the last part says, and let every man ask his neighbor, and every woman from her neighbor, articles of silver and articles of gold. So, I'm a slave. I'm getting my freedom. Hey, can I have some silver and gold? Who would be brave enough to ask that question when you're leaving from slavery? And what did God say? Let every man ask from his neighbor and every woman from her neighbor articles of silver and gold. This is the promise. God said, ask them. All right? Do we have any evidence of that? How many people know the answer? Yeah, we do. And it is not the evidence that you think, because God led me to Exodus 12, 35 and 36. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong story. This one, yes, it is what we thought. It says, now the children of Israel had done according to the word of Moses, and they had asked from the Egyptians articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they granted them what they requested. And thus they plundered the Egyptians. Evidence. You are leaving Egypt right now. There's one more plague's going to happen. And as that happens, you're going to leave Egypt and you're going to ask them for silver and gold. Plague happened. They asked for silver and gold. And what did they get? They got silver and gold. They plundered the Egyptians. As soon as it happened, as soon as they asked, they got it. They got the evidence. So when I was looking at all of these different things, the promise or the command that God gave, the people had something they had to do. So what did the people have to do in this example? They had to ask. Can I have some silver and gold? Since you're kicking me out, can I have some? Doesn't that just seem weird? Just talking like that. Like, can I have some silver and gold, please? And while you're at it, can I have some clothes? Oh, sure, here, now get out of my face. Leave me alone. So, the slaves asked the Egyptians, who are the masters, if they could have silver and gold. They had to ask. They were bold enough to ask because God told them to, right? Sweet. Immediate. Time to go. I need some silver and gold. All right. So then God led me to another story, right? Well, let me back up first. Has anyone ever asked God to do something or has God ever asked you to do something that seemed super crazy, and when you did it, it turned out great? Anybody have an example of that? I see Brittany smiling over there. Is that a yes? Would you care to share? You don't have to. I was just asking. Okay. All right. So God asked you to do something kind of crazy, and when you did it, it turned out.
When Apostle Stanley and his wife was here a long time ago, it had to be like 2019 or 2020, they asked for $1,000 seed to be planted, or maybe they didn't. That was what the Lord had spoke to me about, planting a seed for the building fund at Center for Hope. And I did $1,000 seed, and it did make sense because I remember it being in October, and I know October 20th of 2020 is when the Lord told me to leave my job before I had another job set up. And it turned out great because I believe that seed that I planted was the very same thing that allowed me to break through the spiritual warfare that I was going through.
Amen.
I spoke exactly the new job that I would have before I even saw it. And I was able to walk into that testament and pay off my house before I got my first paycheck from Heartland.
Amen.
So that
Amen.
$1,000 seed ended up paying off, my mortgage in the long run just because of obedience.
Amen. So God asked you to give 1,000. Apostle Stanley asked for money. God told you 1,000. And so she was told $1,000, and from that point, she was able to then pay off her house, quit her job, find the job she wanted. You heard her story, right? Anyone else have a crazy story like that? I remember when I was at Decatur. I was teaching in Decatur, and they had decided to close my high school that I was at, and I didn't really want to go to I didn't have any really thoughts about it. I told you about this a couple weeks ago, so I decided to visit at the baby fold. And by visiting at the baby fold, I was like, I could work here. I think I'll do that. The part I didn't tell you is that by moving to the baby fold from Decatur, I was taking a $10,000 pay cut. So God told me to just, at that time I wasn't saved. I didn't even know who I was listening to. I just did it. And I went to the baby fold, and I had a $10,000 pay cut. And I had more money than ever that year. At the very beginning, not so much. But as I went along, in the interim when I first started, and then I met my future sister-in-law, and then I got saved, and I started going to Bible studies and etc. And in that time, God told me about tithing. I knew what it was, but I just thought, whatever, whatever. And I started tithing for realsies, not just, I got $50 today, I'll put that in. But it's tithing for real. And I have not gone back at that place even close ever again. I think I told you about having 27 cents left before, and that's all I had in my checking account, no food to eat, all of that kind of stuff. And in that interim, when I took that $10,000 pay cut, I ended up in my ministry, which was the baby fold. I ended up really broke until I started tithing, and then I started making money, and then many, many things happened, and I also met my husband. So I like to end with that because that's my favorite part. So God will have you do crazy things, and He will give you the evidence of why you did those crazy things. He will show you that. All right? So, go ahead. That's all right.
One of the things that I didn't mention that you just brought back to my remembrance is in the midst of that season, I heard God tell me to write my resignation letter. When I, 7:45 in the morning, stepped on the first foot of Fell Hall, and I heard, write your resignation letter. And I'm like, this thought didn't come from me because we don't quit jobs before we have another one in alignment.
Exactly.
Like, I have multiple streams of income. This is not in alignment. But I was obedient to that, and I remember I sent an email out to specific intercessors, and I say, hey, this is what I'm hearing God tell me to do. Keep me in prayer. This is the letter that I've written. I know that He's going to tell me when to release it. And it was 20 days later. They were praying for me and with me during this time frame. It was 20 days later that the Lord gave me the cue to say, release it now. And I still didn't have a job. Like, it was just like, okay, well, what am I doing now? I had plan A, B, C, and D. And I remember talking to Bishop and First Lady, again, being connected with spiritual coverings to say,
exactly,
this is plan A, B, C, and D. Plan D was Brittany moving back to Florida, and she gonna move in with her parents. But in the midst of that, God gave me a vision to speak exactly what I was going to be doing. And I was like, what? I was telling people what I was doing and didn't even have it aligned because it came from God. It made no sense. But I got
exactly.
A, B, C, and D. And
Amen.
I just wanted to emphasize that I didn't keep that to myself. God showed me the people to connect with, to be covered in the midst of me making that decision, because I was set on going back to Florida, but it was the coverings that was like, I don't know if we see that, So I still submitted again to leadership and authority of God in the midst of all of that, and He just began to show Himself and make Himself strong.
Amen. Amen. So doing those crazy things, and God will show you the evidence of what it is, the reason why he showed you or told you to go do this, all right? So then God took me to Solomon. I'm reading through the Bible from beginning to end, and I am currently in Second Chronicles, and I was just like, this is perfect. And God says, yes, it is. All right, so we're looking at Solomon. And in Second Chronicles, they give a overview of King David's reign and then Solomon's reign. And so I don't know the exact timing of this. I know it was, well, anyway, I'll get there. So this situation happened to Solomon in a vision. God appeared to Solomon. Solomon had just become the king. And God asked Solomon what he wanted since he had just become king and he had found favor in the sight of the Lord. And what did Solomon ask of God? Wisdom and knowledge. So 2 Chronicles 1, 11 and 12. Then God said to Solomon, because this was in your heart, just asking for wisdom and knowledge, and you have not asked for riches or wealth or honor or the life of your enemies, nor have you asked long life, but have asked wisdom and knowledge for yourself, that you may judge my people over whom I have made you king. Wisdom and knowledge are granted to you, and I will give you riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings have had who were before you, nor shall any have after you the like. So he asked for wisdom and knowledge, and God's like, yeah, that's my boy. Now I'm going to give you this, this, and this, right? So we know that Solomon was what? What do we know about his wealth? Ginormous. He had ginormous wealth. So much wealth you couldn't even count it. What else do we know? People honored him. They knew of his wisdom. I love how his wisdom spread throughout the kingdom, but that's not for tonight. So he had wisdom, he had knowledge, he had honor, he had all of these things. But what was the evidence that we see in the Bible? And it's not just that he was rich, right? Because why did Solomon ask for wisdom and knowledge? For the people, to govern the people. He wanted that wisdom for himself so that he could rule the kingdom. So the evidence is in 2 Chronicles 1 and 15. And also the king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones. And he made cedars as abundant as the sycamores which are in the lowland. So he made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones. That's not just for himself. He made that so common that the people had it as well. Think about that. He had everything that he wanted, and he was also able to get a lot of it for the people who were in Jerusalem. I was like, well, God, I already knew that he was rich and he was smart and he was on it. God's like, no, here's what I need you to see. Also, the king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones. Can you imagine? Hey, can you give me some gold? Oh, here, sure. There you go. How about some silver? Yeah, I got a lot of that. Here. So he made it as common as a stone, just laying around, silver and gold, for everybody, not just for himself, right? So I was like, wow, that is pretty darn cool, pretty cool. Can you imagine living somewhere where gold and silver was that common? Money was everywhere. But this happened when they were going through the outline. He became king and asked for wisdom and knowledge. Then he built the temple, which took about 7 years to build. And during that process is when it was after that this was the evidence, right? So we see where sometimes we get evidence right away. Sometimes we get evidence in a wee bit. Sometimes a few years, right? Evidence of things happening. So what do you think that Solomon had to do? What did he have to do to have this evidence? in each one of these cases, the person does something. What did he do? He asked for wisdom. He asked for knowledge. He didn't ask for any of the rest of it. God was just like, yeah, I'm going to bless you more. Not only am I going to bless you, I'm going to bless those around you. That's just crazy to me. Here's some silver, some gold. Go ahead, have some. Right? Sometimes God gives us something to do, or he gives us a command. Here's what I want you to do. He does not want us to just do something and have no idea if we did it correctly, or we did it for nothing. When God tells us to do something, then we do it, and then we should be able to see the evidence of it. We should know why we're doing it. Something to that effect, right? So he will show you or give you evidence that it was a job well done. Does that make sense? He told Brittany to come up off that job, and she did. And her evidence was blah, blah. I'm not saying blah, blah, but this and this and this. And then she got the job that she wanted, right? So we're going to go to the New Testament in Mark 6 and 7. And he, Jesus, called the 12 to himself and began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them power over unclean spirits. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to, and he actually had a whole list of things that he asked them to do, right? He asked them to go out to the people. He asked them to heal. He asked them to kick out unclean spirits. He told them, don't go with any money. Don't go with any extra clothing. Don't take any food. Don't even take a bag. You go, you meet someone. Hey, Martin, blah, blah, blah. Martin says, come to my house. I'm going to feed you. You can stay here for a while. That's what he wanted the people to do. Or if Martin says, I don't want to talk to you, wash your hands, keep moving. He gave all of these commands commands to do, how to do it. All right? And this is where we come in. This is what we should be doing right now, right? We have the power to go out, and we have the power over unclean spirits. We have the power to heal other people. We have this power from God, and that's what he wants us to do. But where in the Bible was there any evidence that what the men did, and they did it well? Well, if we stay in Mark 6 and go to verse 13, it tells us, and they cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick, and he healed them. So the Bible's telling us, here's what they did. Here's the evidence. I'm telling you, this is what they did. Then if we go to verse 30, it says, the apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a desolate place, and rest a while. For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now, many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all towns and got there ahead of them. What was their evidence that they had been doing it correctly? What about the people? There was a whole multitude. What about them? They were following them. They're like, hey, there's that, whatever. There's Peter. I remember he did such and such. I want to go see this for myself. I want to follow them. I want to be with them. I want this for me. That's kind of crazy if you ask me. Think about it at that time. Newspapers? No. A radio? Mm-mm. Internet? Mm-mm. Going live? Uh-uh. TV? Uh-uh. How would the word spread? How would people know that these were the apostles, or I shouldn't say apostles, these were the men who were healing and casting out demons and etc.? There was evidence. What was the evidence? Sick people healed. There was lots of evidence. Demons. One of the stories that I really like is when the demons go into the pigs, and then the pigs jump off of that cliff into the water and die. I'm like, what? You know, there was word of mouth. That was the only way that the people knew what was going on, was word of mouth. They had to give testimony. They had to give the evidence. They had to say, what was our definition back in the beginning? What did they have to do? Who remembers? It means enables the mind to see truth. Proof arising through our own perceptions by our senses, testimony of others, or from reason. I saw these men going out and doing great things. I saw them preaching. I saw them teaching. And the evidence is they got to go tell Jesus. Can you imagine? I get to go in the room. I get to go wherever Jesus is and literally see him and tell him, look what I did. We went out. God, it was super cool. Or Jesus, it was super cool. We did exactly what you said. And it happened. I mean, how cool is that? You get to tell Jesus. And then you have this multitude of people who are following you and saying, oh, I saw that too. Hey, come here. Here's that guy. Here's that guy who did this. Here's that guy. Come on. Let's go get this for ourselves. That is amazing to me. So we have to have that kind of evidence. God is asking us to have that kind of evidence this year. Evidence. Not just your mouth. This is me. Not just my mouth flapping. Not just, okay, well, in my head, I really meant to go do this, but I did it this way. That's kind of good, but not exactly what God asked me to do. No, that ain't evidence. What did God ask us to do? What was the evidence for the Egyptians when they left, the Israelites when they left Egypt? What was their evidence? They got free. They got silver and gold because they asked. They got clothes because they asked. It's evident to everybody who saw them wandering in the desert for 40 years. Maybe that part's not so great, but they had evidence that they had left. They were no longer captives. They were no longer slaves. They were free to go. And they plundered Egypt without having to do anything. Do you guys know what plundering means? What does it really mean? Ravage. What else? Yeah, if you're going to plunder a city, you don't just go in and say, excuse me, can you bring that over here? Excuse me. You bring that over here? No, you go house to house, to place to whatever, and you take it and you go through her house and you look for it. No, the Israelites just went, can I have your silver and gold? And they're like, yes, go, here, have it. Get out. They didn't have to do anything. What was that? Sweatless blessing. We talked about that some years ago, a sweatless blessing. They didn't really have to do anything other than ask, and they got all this gold and all this silver, and they got all of this stuff. Solomon, all he did was ask for wisdom and knowledge. Yes, Minister Belba. Exactly.
Whatever it takes, you can get them out of here. Because we're about tired of all these plagues, and we see the difference now in where you're living and where we're living now.
Exactly.
So you can
get out of here and take your frogs and your blood and your all this, the locusts and all this stuff. Bye. Go. But all they had to do is ask, right? And then there's this one interesting promise in the Bible. I think it was Genesis 12, 1 through 3. I know that we've heard this promise a lot. And it was given to Abram. And God said to Abram, God spoke directly to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, from your father's house, to a land that I will show you, right? So God is saying, you got to leave your family. You got to leave everything that you know. And I'm going to tell you where you're going to go, but not till you start going. Right? So get out of here. And then I, God, will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I'll make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in all the families, and in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. What did Abram have to do? He had to obey. He had to get out of his country. He had to get away from his family. He had to get out of his father's house, and he had to start walking, riding a donkey, whatever they did at the time, and go and start going. And then once you're going, then I'll tell you where you're going. But I have this promise for you. So this promise, I will make you a great nation. He's going to bless him, give him a great name. He's going to bless those who bless him, curse those who curse him. And in all of the families of the earth, they shall be blessed because of you. Wow. How many in here are Christians who believe in God? You just made that blessing come true. We are that blessed. We are that people. And this is continuing to happen over and over and over. Abram never saw this. But the evidence is still there, because that's me. That's you. That's you. That's you. Right? So his evidence is thousands of years later. Thousands of years later. So sometimes God will give us that evidence right here, right now. Sometimes God will say, all right, we'll do that, but this has to happen first. I'm going to have one more plague, then you're going to get silver and gold. I'm going to have you go do something for me, and then you're going to tell me the evidence. Or here's this promise, and it's going to be in the makings forever. In the makings forever. It's like, wow, there's going to be evidence of what God has for all of us. And we need to be able to share it with others. We need to be able to say, here is the evidence. So I said a little bit of this on Sunday. When I was either 18 or 19, the first time I was on an airplane by myself. We take off from, I think it was O'Hare, I don't remember, but Chicago. We take off. My sister had always says, watch somebody in a suit because they probably fly a lot. If they're not nervous, you don't need to be nervous. I'm like, oh, okay. So we're going up. And it feels like we're going in a circle. I'm like, that seems weird. So I look at this guy who's in a suit, and he goes back to what he was doing. And then feels like we're still going in a circle. And he kind of looks up, and I'm like, oh, he's looking up. Should I be nervous? So the pilot comes on, and this is what he says. Now, this was 40 years ago. And he said, we're heading back into Chicago. I just want to let you know it's no big deal. Our landing gear won't retract, which means I can't steer the plane once we land. So once we get down closer, you're going to see fire trucks, and you're going to see police cars. You're going to see maybe foam on there on the runway. But don't be worried. I've done this before. And in my head, I probably can't say it out loud, what I was thinking, and I'm going to die, right? So that's the first time I'd ever been on a plane by myself, and I was 18 or 19. So from that point on, I didn't fly for years. So then I started flying, but oh my gosh, my stomach hurt. I would be, for 2 weeks ahead of time at least. In my head, I'm thinking, I got to get on an airplane. I'm probably going to die. The plane is going to crash. I had all these thoughts in my head. Poor Don, he would be like, why are you so grouchy? I'm like, I honestly didn't know. And I finally figured out, I'm getting on an airplane in a couple of weeks, and I think I'm going to die. So fast forward to last week. We were on the airplane. We went to Don's brother's funeral. We were coming back from San Diego into Dallas. I love landing now. That's my favorite part, mostly because, yes, we're going to be on the ground. But I love landing. So I'm always looking out the window, watching it. And feel the landing gear come down. And then he goes, woo, and he flies back up in the air. And I'm thinking, okay, that ain't good. And he comes on. He's like, I'm sorry, there was some debris on the runway, whatever. So we're going to do one more circle, come back and land. And the guy behind me, on an airplane, everybody kind of talks like this. This guy starts talking like this. And he says, oh, there's only one reason why we have to do what do you call it, a flyby? A fly around. We had to do a fly around. Yeah, there's debris. We were going to run over something and crash. Or there was a plane on the runway, and we about ran into him. I texted my sister, and I told her we were almost a statistic. And he is literally, da 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 da. And I'm thinking, what the? And we land, and we're like, yeah, everybody's landing. And he goes, yeah. And then he calls his sister and says, yeah, wasn't that funny? I told you we were almost a statistic. He didn't explain to her what really happened. He just told her, basically almost crashed. And he is just yucking it up, talking like this, literally the whole plane is dead silent, but him, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm just like, nobody thinks that's funny. And I said it just like that, and he stopped talking. So we get to Dallas, then we get on the airplane, we're coming back to Bloomington. We landed in Bloomington, no big deal. And I thought, I was not nervous even a little bit. I was more mad at dude behind me who was like, and I was like, God, wow. I was not nervous at all, and I can't wait. We're going to go to Disney in February, and I'm excited to go. We're flying. And then I'm doing this, and I'm like, that's evidence, God. That is evidence. I was not scared at all. I was like, wow. I mean, truly, I was amazed, because Don can tell you I'm really kind of grouchy for about 2 weeks beforehand. Sometimes I don't even know why. And it's because of it's called unresolved trauma is really what it was, almost dying. So God will give us evidence. Now you guys can hear my story. You feel the truth in it, right? That's evidence. That's one way to give evidence, is the other person, the person that you're talking to. Maybe you're talking to yourself and you feel the truth in the matter because you're using your perceptions. You know me, you've heard me tell stories and blah, blah, blah. That helps too. But that is giving the evidence. So this year, I want to admonish you all to look for the evidence. Look for the evidence that God is going to show you. He is going to show you evidence of how he is working in your life. And one of the things that I really think is super important is tell somebody about that evidence. Testify about that, because he's going to give you evidence. Sometimes, now we do have to go sometimes, it is thousands of years later and Abram is getting his evidence from us. So it's been a while. He's probably not still alive, would be my guess. But there's going to be evidence. This is the year of evidence. So to me, this is the year you're going to see the evidence. You're going to know the evidence. It's not going to be 1,000 years later. It's not going to be a generation later. It's not going to be 7 years later after you've built the temple. It's going to be now. But if you don't recognize it, it's for naught. It's for nothing. So make sure that if God tells you something, he asks you to do something, and you do it, look for the evidence. Look for it. Look for the answer. It might not be what you think it is. I'm going to guess that Solomon didn't even think that his prayer would be beneficial to all of his people, that they got to see silver and gold just as common as a stone. I'm going to guess that's not something that he thought about 7 years later. But that's something that you can look for in your life, something that you can testify to, tell people about. Let them know, look, God asked me to do this, or I knew I had to do this, and this happened because of it. So look for that evidence. So that is what I want you all to learn tonight, is that when God gives you something to do, look for the evidence. This year we're going to see it. And maybe you were told something 5, 10 years ago. You're going to see that evidence of it this year. That's why we have the word evidence as our word for the year. So I'm hoping y'all can look for that. I'm hoping y'all can see that. And I'm hoping y'all can tell someone else about it. Because when we tell someone else, we can bring someone else to God, and they can see. They can taste and see that the Lord is good. All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments or concerns or want to share a story? I'm always willing to have people testify if anybody has a story they want to share. Nothing? Nobody? All right. If you want to get out your offering for today, if you want to get out your money to for this evening, that would be a wonderful thing. And then I'll go ahead and I'll pray us out, pray over the offering. All right. God, just thank you. Thank you for showing us evidence, God. Not only will you show that evidence in our life, but we can see evidence in the Bible as well. We can see where you gave a promise or a command, and we can see the answer or the evidence in the Bible, the answers that you gave to the people when you gave them the command or the promise. And I thank you for that, God. You never leave us lacking. You never leave us without an answer. We always have an answer, God. So I pray that we open our heart, we open our ears, we open our eyes to see the evidence around us that's in our life about you, God. And I thank you in advance for what you're going to show us this year. And I'm super excited to hear other people testify of evidence in their life this year. So I want to say thank you and thank you and thank you for all that you do for us. And I also want to bless the offering that's coming forth tonight. And I want to say thank you for the people who have reached into their pocket or picked up their phone to give the money to help not only to keep the place, the actual building open, but to bless someone else. Because when we give an offering, it is a blessing for someone else as well. So I just want to say thank you. And we love you. And we say amen.